SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Toyota of Brookhaven has been voted best new car dealership in Southwest Mississippi 4 years in a row. Come see the difference. Exit 40 Brookhaven or online at toyotabrookhaven.com. Great service, great savings. At Toyota of Brookhaven, we deliver.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Hump Day.
Yeah, man, we've made it to the middle of the week we have, and of course, because it is a Wednesday, it is the day after big primary days across these United States yesterday. And I guess the big news out of the primary probably is Representative Thomas Massey. He was rather soundly defeated in his bid for re-election. Would that be for, we figured it out yesterday, 8th term, I think? Or he served 8, going for his 9th?
7th. I'll double check, but I'm certain he's serving his 7th.
Okay, so he was trying to get reelected for the 8th cycle. But he did not prevail, and he didn't mince any words. He blamed it on Israel. What did he made? What was the comment he said? That he tried to contact his opponent?
6th, running for 7th.
Okay, running for 7th. Tried to contact his opponent, but didn't have the number to Israel or something crazy like that. I'm not necessarily buying that, though. I'm really not. That that seems to be a popular belief among his supporters and many who think that we're in too deep with Israel and that Israel is interfering with our politics. Really?
He's been against AIPAC and Israeli influence for as long as he's been in office.
But do you think that was a factor at the ballot box?
That's why I'm bringing that up. If it hasn't been a factor before now, why is it all of a sudden a factor?
Sure. Makes sense. I think what was most notable and fascinating about that particular race, I don't know if you saw this, but how voters broke for the candidates from a demographic perspective. So this is the data on that. This is a poll that was conducted. It's the 65 and over demographic that swept his opponent into office there. Ed Gelrine beat Massey in this district, and he did not win the over 65 he did win the over 65 demographic. Let me get that right. All the other age groups he lost. So all those younger than 65 broke for Massey. But those over the age of 65 and over, they all voted overwhelmingly for, is it Galrine or Gallrine? I've never heard it pronounced, honestly. I've seen it, printed a million times. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody pronounce his name. So I apologize. I don't know the correct pronunciation. Usually I go research that before I start citing names. I apologize. We'll get that for you. But Gallrein, that is the spelling of the individual who won the Republican primary for Kentucky's 4th District, defeating longtime incumbent, you said 6th-term incumbent, right? Going for his 7th, Thomas Massie, a libertarian favorite. But it's the over 65 group. Incredible. 65% of them voted.
Gallrein.
Okay. Ballrin, right?
Gallrein.
Pardon me. Okay. I'm looking at it wrong here. Gallrein. Gallrein. All right. Appreciate you doing that. That's one of those could go either way, right? I guess when you have the two consonants after the letter A, the vowel there, usually it is the short pronunciation of the A is the gall instead of gal, right? So Gallrein. So got 65% of the 65 and over age group. The Representative Massie in the 18 to 29 group, of course, no surprise that he is well-liked by that age group. They broke 78% for him. Here's the problem. They don't vote. That's the fundamental problem here. So the 18 to 29s, Massie got it, 78%. 30 to 44, 64%. 45 to 64 age group, 53%. So 78, 64, 53, those are the percentages of the total vote captured in each of those demographic age group categories. But then you go to the 65 and up, and 65% went for Gallrein, 35% went for Massie. And that was enough to do it. Because there ain't enough of them voting. That's the problem. What do we got to do to get young people to the polls? And here's what's crazy, Rhino. They're affected more by this. Ostensibly, they're affected more.
I mean, younger generations will statistically live with the consequences longer.
Yeah, well, for starters. But 65 and over, many of those people, they got your stable Social Security income and Medicare coverage, right? Probably got little to no debt. Not looking to start a family, buy a house, make major purchases. I'm generalizing, but I think you could look at that age group and say, yeah, they're riding out their retirement years, enjoying their retirement years. So you think about things like taxes and spending and fiscal and economic policy. It has a less effect, I would say, on them, certainly for a shorter amount of time, as you point out, just based on their age. I just found that to be an interesting analysis, is that when you look at the age groups and how they cast their ballots, overwhelmingly, they went for Massie if they're below the age of 64, and they went for Gallrein if they're above it.
They had that same breakdown on the exit polls yesterday afternoon, and it was already looking grim for Massie.
Well, there you go. So does that mean that the 65 and older crowd is listening to the president more, maybe being influenced by the president more? Because the president made it very clear he wanted Massie out of there. He campaigned hard against him and for his opponent. It certainly shows that Mr. Trump, the president, has a pretty strong grip on the party, certainly in certain parts of the country. I think Kentucky, one that overwhelmingly supported him. You would expect that. And then now in Texas, we shared that with you yesterday. That came out of nowhere, unexpected, where he says that he is endorsing Ken Paxton. A big runoff next Tuesday in the Lone Star State that pits Attorney General Ken Paxton in a U.S. Senate seat currently held by the incumbent, John Cornyn. The president has said he is in support of the challenger, who has been straight down the line a Trump supporter, a MAGA supporter. Senator Cornyn, maybe a little lesser so. And certainly the president believes that. But you shared with us yesterday, informed our audience that there are a number of, shall we say, senior senators, of course they're just about all senior senators, that are a little upset that the president broke for someone who is not an incumbent, a challenger. Someone who's got a pretty good reputation in the Senate, in John Cornyn, and that includes talking about those who seem to be a bit miffed by the president's endorsement, our own Senator Roger Wicker. Someone on our text line pointed that out, and then you researched it and found that it appeared that he had a rather unsettling, shall we say, I'm trying to be nice about this, look on his face when that was announced, right? That was those who were around him and that were capturing that and so forth indicated that. But such is politics. There's no doubt about it. And it looks like Representative Barr won the Republican nomination for Mitch McConnell's seat in Kentucky as well. We got more to talk about. Mark Vargas, Iraq Task Force, Office of the Secretary of War, between 07 and 10 at 11:05. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So before we went to break, and also in Kentucky, Andy Barr. He's a representative. He was backed by the president. He is running for U.S. Senate for the seat currently held by the senior Senator Mitch McConnell. And he beat a fairly crowded field to replace McConnell. But it looks like that he wins the primary outright, and he will be headed into the general election coming up this November, of course, when we will go to the polls and vote for the candidates for the various House and Senate races. I think we looked at it, 33 Senate seats being contested. Of course, every House seat, 33, some pivotal ones for sure. Again, if you didn't catch us earlier in the week, what really blows me away is the amount of dough being spent on these political races. Jeez, crazy. In Texas, of course, you're going to break the bank out there, but perhaps what could be the race that receives the most campaign investment ever is the Senate seat being currently held by Senator Tom Tillis, who's certainly not aligned with the president. He's become rather a thorn in the side of the president there, bucking him on many matters and issues. But that particular race is fascinating. It's got former North Carolina governor Roy Cooper, the Democrat, and he's facing Michael Whatley, a Republican, former Republican Party chairman, national chairman. And there are journalists, political analysts in North Carolina, the Tar Heel State, that say this thing could get up to $1 billion for a Senate seat. You looked up for us the other day, to my surprise, the total amount spent by both candidates at 16, President Trump, Hillary Clinton, was around $1 billion, right? But then in the 24 race, the president spent north of $1 billion just for his campaign. $1 billion for a Senate seat is insanity.
Well, Kamala spent $1 billion.
Okay, Kamala spent
the total for the last presidential election was $1.6 billion.
And she was, okay, I misunderstood that. So she was $1 billion of the total 1.6. It's still 1.6 on a presidential election. But $1 billion on a Senate seat? Man, oh man. Geez. So, of course, you already know Saturday, incumbent Senator Bill Cassidy from the Bayou State of Louisiana to our west, he went down. He, too, was taken out by a challenger who was endorsed by the president, Julia Letlow. And looks like that she'll be heading to the general election there in Louisiana. First time in quite some time they've had partisan primaries, we learned, in Louisiana. They've typically been conducting what are called jungle primaries, just all parties or non-parties on the ballot, and if nobody gets 50 plus 1, you go to a runoff, and that runoff essentially determines the winner. It's the way it works. So rather than our system, or as is the case in Kentucky, partisan primaries, nominees are selected through that process, and then they head to the general election. Interesting. So, big night in politics across the country for sure. In the meantime, the president says that he is issuing what looks like another ultimatum, weekend ultimatum, right, to Iran. So you sort of wonder, when is he going to follow through on these ultimatums? Because thus far, for various reasons, he's announced that he will not be acting as, I guess, was proposed, threatened. That just happened yesterday. We were supposed to have all hell breaking loose in Iran. That was kind of a deadline. He says that partners in the region, allies in the region, asked him to stand down. So he didn't proceed. But we got another one for this weekend. We'll certainly see where that goes at this point. The markets are feeling pretty good this morning, Rhino, and I hadn't checked into why. I'm looking at the Dow up off its highs. It has been up as much as 500 points. It's up 416. The NASDAQ up 323. I got to believe that the Treasury yields are down, and that's what drove markets down yesterday. They work in opposite directions, but traders of Treasury securities nervous about inflation, and they drove yields up. That typically drives markets down, equity prices down, and that's what happened. But I'm wondering if they're feeling a little better about the situation in Iran. Not sure. And then you've also got NVIDIA announcing their earnings after the bell today. And, man, all eyes are certainly on that one. They've driven so much of the explosion of stock price increases in the technology sector for sure. They've kind of been the bellwether for that. And what about Intel, the original chip maker, if you will, certainly from central processing units that were what we call open systems, meaning available for anybody to buy, as opposed to proprietary. Think about the old mainframe days. IBM had IBM mainframes that had central processing units, but they were made for and used exclusively by IBM. And if you wanted to write software to work on those machines, you had to write it for that environment, that proprietary environment. The world changed back in, honestly, the early 80s with the personal computer, the advent of so-called open systems, meaning, hey, we'll tell you all the deep, dark technical secrets here. Come on in and write software and build enhancement products and peripherals. And used to be, you had to have a dang IBM cable to connect a device to an IBM computer. It wouldn't work. I'm not exaggerating either. And you paid a premium for that.
No, but it's a perfect example of that was a high-growth, fast-growth industry. And government, being government, was so far behind, it took Reagan watching the movie War Games and calling everybody together and going, hey, could this really happen?
Exactly right.
And they were like, we'll check on that. And a couple weeks later, he got the report and is like, it's a lot worse than we thought, Mr. President.
That is 100% right. That you're exactly right.
That's what led to the cybercrime laws that got passed in the mid to late 80s.
Yeah, before we even thought about that. And we didn't have all these networks that we do today. We weren't moving data around with Ethernet back then. That's not how it worked. So, great analysis there. Totally agree. But this open systems world has led to so much innovation. You can't even begin to describe it. But it all started when Intel said, we're making these little wafer chips here, and we'll sell them to anybody. And then you had operating systems that were wide open for anybody to peek at and build their software around. But Intel really kind of, from a hardware perspective, they were pivotal in that open systems revolution. But where I was going with that, thinking about stock prices, their stock's up 200% this year because they had a bit of an epiphany and decided, yeah, we kind of missed the boat on this AI thing, but they're getting their act together. And then I also saw a deal cut between Blackstone, the big private equity guys, and Google on their Tensor. What do they get? TSUs? Tensor processing units. I can't remember what the S stands for, but it's somewhat of a rival to NVIDIA's GPUs, except they're way more tailored, and they're ASICs that are specific for certain, enhanced for AI tasks and matrix math and stuff like that. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook Dike.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays, and it is Tensor processing units. I said it right the first time. And Blackstone, they are, of course, major private equity firm, and they happen to be the largest private investor in data centers, and they're going to throw $5 billion in capital. That doesn't even seem like a lot anymore, does it? In a new infrastructure company with Google. Interesting. So Google's going to supply this new company with its TPUs. It went a little different direction. Again, a bit of a competitor to rival, somewhat of a rival, NVIDIA, famous for their graphics processing units that were created, Rhino, 20, 25 years ago for video games, and it turns out they're pretty good at artificial intelligence tasks. And so it's...
technically the GPU's been around a lot longer than that.
90s.
The idea of it goes back to like the 60s.
Yeah, raster graphics is what it was called. In fact, I know this is crazy. I got a couple of books on my shelf that's nothing but raster graphics code that I used to play around with. It's books on how to write raster graphics code.
But yeah, it wasn't until the 90s and the 2000s when video games went from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions and polygons instead of pixels, where the computing power had to dramatically increase for that for that explosion of innovation to happen.
It's a bunch of math. That's what it is. Well, this is interesting. Now, these are a little different applications. So typically, these would be these chips installed in computers, in data centers, what are called neo-cloud data centers. That's where those data centers, those operators are selling what's called compute as a service, as opposed to infrastructure as a service. So you want infrastructure as a service, Amazon Web Services, for example, and there are dozens of different categories of what's called IaaS, infrastructure as a service. And essentially you're buying all the elements to host, to power workloads, usually a software application, an environment. And it's the servers, the operating system, the storage, the networking, the connectivity, the security, all kind of in one. Whereas when you're buying compute as a service, it's what's called bare metal. Hey, I just want the machine with the processor plugged in, essentially. I'll take it from there. That's how that works. And so there are companies that need just that compute power for various applications. Sometimes that's at the core. Sometimes that's at their edge of their overall IT workloads. And sometimes it's developers. A lot of the customers are developers that are working on things that are a twinkle in the eye today. In these tensor processing units that Google's all about, they are highly specialized, and they're optimized and tailored for compute with respect to artificial intelligence and what's called matrix math, which is kind of underlies AI. So
it was another form of entertainment that kind of sparked that idea of off-site computing with the needed computational cycles for 3D animation.
Okay.
Like you look at the behind-the-scenes making of something like Toy Story, like one of the first big CGI, full CGI movies, and how many hours went into rendering it.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward a couple of the movies, and they've started rendering much faster because they have better hardware, but also they're able to offload some of it.
Makes total sense. And that's the whole idea, honestly, behind GPUs and TPUs, is that you got the central processing that handles all the sort of normal tasks, and then all of a sudden one still flows through it. It says, oh, I'm not really good at that. This is sort of how it works. I'm going to hand that off to the GPU in the same device, in the same computer, literally. And it does that and then returns the results. The CPU returns it to the end user. That's kind of how the workflow works.
Thousands of times a second.
Exactly. Nanoseconds. Exactly right. Really cool. Also, Georgia, an exciting, I say exciting Senate race because I'm really not a big fan of Jon Ossoff. He's a senator that's up for re-election. I find him to be a bit of a racist and a Marxist, and it's just mind-boggling that he supports, or I should say he represents, the peach state of Georgia. But you got a primary held yesterday, Republican Mike Collins. He, I think they're going, if I'm not mistaken, to a runoff, right, on that one, Rhino. He got 40% of the vote, and he's going into a runoff against former college football coach Derek Dooley, who got 30% of the vote. And that is for the opportunity to challenge incumbent Democrat Senator Jon Ossoff in the fall. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, the Republican from Minnesota. Have you ever wondered, how does somebody with such conservative bona fides in Emmer, I like Emmer, He's in Minnesota where the crazy person is the governor, and you got numerous other crazy people as well that represent the Great Lakes state of Minnesota. But Emmer yesterday, House Majority Whip, he has endorsed Representative Mike Collins, a colleague who's stepping out of the House, running for the Senate. So hopefully Representative Collins, I think he's a good one as well, can take down John Ossoff, who is really despicable, honestly. To be perfectly honest about it, if you pay any attention to him, holds himself as a preacher. Don't you always worry about? I do. Part-time preachers, I'm always worried about part-time preachers. Just always skeptical. And that's one to keep an eye on as well. Here at home, the city of Jackson, Mississippi, where we are presently located, said at city council meeting they're debating pausing data centers. You know, am I wrong here, Rhino? You got a city that's in shambles, losing population. You drive around the place, there are more boarded up buildings than there are occupied buildings. A myriad of infrastructure problems, crime problems, people moving out, not in. You'd think you'd figure out a way to attract investment like this. You know the problem, though. Oh, you got to pay to play. That's the problem. But you have all the shakedown artists show up because of the procurement policies that I've railed on. Senator Horn, Mayor Horn now, repeal those things, man. It's critical to moving Jackson to the next level and improving the quality of life and everything about the city of Jackson. I know you want to, and I want to help you, but you got to get rid of those racist, discriminatory procurement policies. It's just simple as that. Because you know that there would be, Rhino, if let's say that one of the hyperscalers came calling, said, hey, look, we'd like to do something in Jackson. You'd have an absolute Bible-size list of requirements, right? And they'd say, oh, okay, no thanks. Are we not seeing that in New York and California? You're now seeing two states that at one time were absolute havens for entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurs are saying, this is crazy. It takes too long. You're dealing with expensive, onerous regulations, nutcase taxes. I'm going somewhere else. And it's on a smaller scale. We have that same situation in the city of Jackson. And it's a shame, but I get it. And what they're citing, of course, is the complaints about the noise from the XAI facility in DeSoto County. That's a situation where I think there needed to be a little bit more thought put into that one. That's a function of the gas turbines that are supplying electricity to the facilities. Elon Musk, in a hurry, I think that one got away from him. And I agree. Now, I will challenge anybody. Go out to the AWS site in Canton where there are 6 buildings in production, operating right now today with 500 full-time badged Amazon Web Services employees inside, maintaining those facilities. Go out there. You don't hear a thing except the tractors, the earth movers. Is anybody's power gone up as a result yet? Nope. You having water pressure problems? Nope. See any smoke or pollution? Nope. Right, because it was done right. And that's the key. And I'm proud of my home city of Ridgeland. They adopted, I talked about this, a set of ordinances related to data centers a couple of weeks ago. It was the right thing to do. Good news, AWS already did that. Coming right back.
Hello.
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert
Come on, let's get on with the show!
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
there anyone home? Come on down. I hear you feeling down. Well, I can ease your pain, get you on your feet again.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Once again, Mark Vargas, Iraq Task Force, Office of the Secretary of War between 2007 and 2010, on with us in the next segment. Later on in the program at 12:35, it's Brian Hadad, the co-host of Sports Talk Mississippi and Thunder and Lightning. We'll get his analysis of the SEC baseball tournament in Hoover, Alabama this week. I just want to kind of go back to what I was saying before we went to break. The city of Ridgeland, my home city, just adopted a series of ordinances concerning the data center. You could call it sort of data center regulations, if you will. And it's common sense stuff, honestly. But the good news is, and the city even announced this when they released these new ordinances, that the AWS project, of course, remember we got a campus in Canton and a campus in South Madison County in Ridgeland, in the city of Ridgeland, complies with these standards before these regulations were put into place. And it's zoning regulations. For example, you can't build one within 500 feet of a residential dwelling. Okay, I think that makes sense. And then there's standards concerning sound, decibel levels. And there's some nuance in there. And, of course, you got HVAC equipment as well. But here's the good news. That infrastructure has improved dramatically in the last few years with respect to the sound it produces. You turn those big generators on, you can't hardly hear them standing next to them now. And unlike what is portrayed by the anti-data center people, including the Democrats in Mississippi, who were all over the governor saying that he sold out to these data center people and they're going to kill everybody. And they include photos of what looks like a 1970s era steel factory in Pittsburgh with 80-foot high smokestacks with black smoke billowing out. There's no such thing at a data center. What do they think they're doing in there? Oh, my gosh. How duplicitous is that?
Well, the first problem you had was when you thought they actually think.
Oh, my gosh. There also has to be what's called a vegetated buffer, a minimum width of 100 feet along all the borders of the property. And, of course, the data center operators must demonstrate that they're going to pay for both the public and the private infrastructure. And that includes water, electricity. They've got to present their plan on handling any wastewater they have. They've also got to have to be responsible for fire protection. If there's anything outsized there, emergency access, that's a typical thing when you got a big facility like that. So this is all just common sense stuff. They indicate in the ordinances that temporary or backup generators are not to be used to provide primary power. Well, of course, that would be a problem if they're running constantly. They can be used, as is the case, for testing, for activation of new equipment, new infrastructure. Sure, you got to do that to make sure all the failover and resiliency is set up correctly. And then there are rules about lighting. You know, that the lighting goes in a certain direction and it shouldn't be shielded. It's got to be directed away from the adjacent properties. So you've got a 100-foot vegetation buffer plus this lighting requirement as well. So I think this is all common sense stuff. Again, I want to point out the good news is AWS did all this in their design. In fact, they're doing it everywhere. They want to be good members of the community. They don't want to be at odds with the people where they're making these massive investments.
Richard Hanania on Twitter said it best. Data centers aren't targeted because of the actual things that activists complain about. They're targeted because it's a way for people who are conspiratorial or hate capitalism to express themselves, and sadly, that's a lot of people.
That is totally true, which is why you got AOC and Bernie Sanders co-drafting legislation at the federal level that would just completely ban data centers.
That's why there's a handful of Facebook groups for every single state in the union run by Chinese and Indian bots putting out AI-generated imaging, activist imaging against data centers.
Totally true. And that has been discovered recently that there's a lot of Chinese funding. Go figure, right? Because they want to maintain technical superiority over us in cloud services and artificial intelligence. Because we know whoever has that high ground dominates the world. Coming right back. Stay with us.
Your
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Hump Day.
It's our great pleasure to welcome now Mark Vargas. He is a member of the Iraq Task Force in the Office of the Secretary of War, 2007, 2010, and still at it, right, Mark?
That's right. It's great to be with you.
Thanks for joining us today. So, and thank you for your service as well, both previously and, of course, now, helping out the president, our secretary, with the situation in Iran. We wanted to have you on. The president looks like he's issued another ultimatum for the weekend. And I think Americans have some concerns, Mark, that the president issues these threats and kind of puts a line in the sand, gives Iran a deadline. Nothing happens, or maybe things do happen, and he decides to just stand down. And here we go again. What can we expect this time? What do you think?
Well, Gerard, here's the good news and the better news. The good news is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, the Iranian regime, has been decimated. They're gone. The mothership has been destroyed. And our children's children, their children, will be safer because of these actions. Now, the even better news. I cannot underscore how important it was last week for President Trump during his visit to Beijing for President Xi Jinping to say two things. One, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And number two, the Strait of Hormuz must be completely 100% open. Prior to this meeting, we did not have those statements coming out of Beijing. So that is absolutely essential and critical. So the fact that the president has been delaying, it tells me one thing. It tells me that we've had progress in these negotiations that are happening behind the scenes. And I believe that the statements by the Chinese leader last week have caused a chain reaction under the radar and behind the scenes for rapid negotiations. Now you've got China weighing in on this. We've got support from the Gulf states, but now we've got China who buys $50 billion a year in oil from the Iranian regime. And so this is absolutely essential. And so now I think the president's saying, let's give it a little bit more time. Again, he's the peacemaker. He doesn't want to blow them into smithereens, but everybody knows that he'll do it. And that's a major negotiating point for the president going into this final stretch.
Mark, when do we claim victory and say, okay, it's over, it's done, we're where we want to be, we've met the objective, and we can, I guess, pull back our military presence in the region? How do we measure that? How do we know?
Well, for one, the sheer numbers, we've already achieved our military objective of complete decimation. I mean, 90% of their capabilities, we've hit everything. But I think that we could claim full and total and complete victory when we force the Iranian, what's left of the regime, to concede and say, all right, we will not build a nuclear weapon. That dream is over. And secondly, we will open the Strait of Hormuz. And we've got widespread support in the Gulf region. Now we've got support from the Chinese. This is a historic collaboration of the unlikely partners, all zeroing in on what's left of the Iranian regime. But I think we're nearing the end. But again, we needed this concession from China in order to take these negotiations to the final stage.
Well, so we believe that they do have enriched uranium somewhere in the country. I'm not sure, and I don't know that the public would know that we happen to know where it is. I know we have incredibly sophisticated intelligence, so that's likely that we do know. But is it possible that they'll just turn that over in a peaceful way, or do you feel like that it might require troops on the ground to invade Iran and head to that location and literally capture that uranium and get it out of the country?
Well, I think, the military option is always on the table. And President Trump created the art of the deal. He also created the art of surprise and the art of unpredictability. And so that's always on the table. We've got teams that have trained, very small, agile, SEAL team-like teams that can go in and secure it. And so wouldn't require, if we had to, wouldn't require a large, full-scale military operation. It would be small and agile. So that's always an option. But I think, part of the discussions and the negotiation is, look, you have no choice. Your back's against the wall. We know that Karg Island has 90% of your oil is there. And it's one button away from completely destroying and decimating your oil. And so these are tremendous negotiating tactics going in. But I think that, the objective is to do this peacefully. But again, they know that President Trump and our partners know. China knows, the Gulf region knows. Trump's not messing around, and he's not afraid or intimidated to push the button.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's absolutely the case. And I also certainly agree with you, and I think it was a bit of a surprise when President Xi came out and made the comments about Iran. Yeah, they cannot have a nuclear weapon, and we got to get the strait back open. But he stopped short, it seems, of exerting some pressure on the regime to get them to come to the table and get this thing worked out and get it resolved.
Knowing what I know, Gerard, from sort of international the politics and sort of the war zone types, is you don't want to put out all your cards all at once.
Sure.
And so probably a very light endorsement in the beginning of those conceding those 2 points. But, privately, they're probably a lot more aggressive in their rhetoric with what's left of the regime. So I think it's sort of a good cop, bad cop mentality that China might be playing. But they've got the pressure from the Gulf partners. They've got the financial partners. That was the whole objective of the blockade, was to choke the Iranian regime financially, literally until their lips turned purple. And right now their lips are purple. They're hurting hundreds of millions of dollars a day. It's killing them financially. And so they're not going to be able to hold on much longer. They're losing their grip. And China weighing in now creates a big problem for this regime.
Well, Iran, as you know, is a small nation from an area perspective, but it has a very concentrated and relatively large population that occupies that land. What is life like in Iran right now, Mark? What do you know about that you can share with us? It's just got to be just decimated.
What is? I mean, the Iranian people have been tortured. There are no women's rights. Girls are forced to marry at 9 years old. Could you imagine your daughter being forced to marry at 9 years old? There are no women's rights. There are no gay rights. They hang people that are gay or lesbian in the town square to let everyone know you cannot come out. If you do, this is what happens to you. Their economy has crashed. They've controlled the media. They've controlled the information flow. And so, these people are desperate to get out from underneath this terrorist regime for the last 50 years. And we saw just a glimpse of this, Gerard, when President Trump took out the Ayatollah. You saw celebrations all over the world, whether it was in London or Australia, or places like Chicago where they were waving the Palestinian flag. They paused and put down the Palestinian flags in order to celebrate the removal and death of the Ayatollah. And so I think that just gives people around the world just a small glimpse of how desperate the Iranian people are to get back up on their feet again. And the key to this is President Trump and all the peace treaties that he's negotiated, 8 or 9 in his first year in office, they all have, Gerard, and you understand this from a business perspective, they have a unique piece to them. This is how to convert a war front into a storefront. Economic development, job creation, investment from countries in the Gulf region. That's what's going to stand up the country, put the people back on their feet again, and lead them to a prosperous and democratic future, far away from this terrorist regime. And I think they're on the path to do that.
Do you think, Mark, that it illustrates that we're wired as humans? We yearn for freedom. We yearn for liberty. And when oppressors and other humans interfere with that, bad things happen, and people celebrate when they feel like there's an opportunity to get to what we all believe we're entitled to from our Creator.
You're 100% right. I mean, they're going to have to deploy crisis counselors and PTSD because for so many years, for decades, I mean, think about this. The Iranian regime killed 40,000 of their own people. What was their crime, Gerard? Their crime was protesting their terrorist regime government. 40,000 innocent people were murdered by this regime. And so it's going to take a long time for them to feel normal again. But I do believe, and we saw a glimpse of that from around the world, with the celebrations of the death of the Ayatollah. I do believe that the Iranian people are ready to stand up and take back control of their country after 50 years, and their partners, our partners in the region, Gulf region, and now China weighing in. They want that too.
Yeah, I agree. We got to go, but the world would just be so much better off without this menace, without this blemish on our planet that causes so many problems throughout the globe. No doubt about it. Mark, appreciate you coming on and enjoyed your perspective, and thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us on Middays. Thank you, man.
God bless you. Thank you.
You too. Mark Vargas, Iraq Task Force from 07 to 10. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
My doctor's office.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge.
Huge news.
Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We appreciate Mark Vargas for joining us today. And certainly his perspective, his knowledge on this subject of what's going on with Iran is big time. So the president said that Netanyahu will do whatever I want. That's his quote on Iran. And he's in no hurry, his quote also, to make a deal. Interesting. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC as it is known, has threatened to push the war beyond the region if the U.S. or Israel resume attacks, promising crushing blows in places you cannot even imagine. Jeez. They're all bark and no bite is what they are. They are not in a position of negotiating leverage. As the president says, we have all the cards. Though, I must admit, people are getting weary of the price at the pump. They're getting a little frustrated with the inflation, and the midterms are around the corner. And I think it's pretty critical for that situation to reverse and to turn around. Specifically, we need to see the price at the pump decline precipitously and inflation be reined in, or it certainly could be problematic for Republicans. So I hope there's a resolution to this as soon as possible. It is interesting to think about whether or not ground troops are needed to seize the enriched uranium inside the borders of Iran and remove it from the country. I don't feel like that they're just going to hand it over to us, right? I don't feel like that's the case.
But the conversation surrounding ground troops in Iran is an unpopular conversation. That being said, there are a lot of special forces operations that take place that the public never hears about, never knows about. And if Vargas is correct in that there is a highly trained, agile, small team of expert individuals whose sole mission is to do just that, they could be in and out with it before we even knew it happened.
Oh, that's exactly right. I agree.
And at that point, the conversation does change because a sizable chunk of the people that aren't for boots on the ground would still take pride in a successful mission.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're spot on with that analysis. And just to further, another example, I should say, of the oppression in Iran and really just the horrific action that the regime has taken against its own citizens. They just announced jailed a former goalkeeper for the national men's soccer team after he published earlier this year a post critical of the supreme leader at that time, Ali Khamenei. His wife said yesterday. So they don't mess around, and this is the way. You see, if you want to impose what honestly are policies and rules that go against the grain of basic human liberty, this is about the only way you can stop response in this case. And that's to just, we got to go lock them up. Oh my gosh, they dissented. So if you don't want a negative reaction from people because you're interfering with their just basic fundamental right of liberty, and that includes, by the way, freedom of speech. There's a reason why that's at the top of the list in the United States Bill of Rights. I think the founders were about sick of that from whence they came, because the same thing existed there. If you spoke out,
and to a certain extent is back.
That's exactly right. I agree. It's hard to believe we hadn't learned our lesson from that. But if you spoke out against the monarchy, off with your head. You couldn't do it. How long's China been doing this? Communist nations. North Korea, Cuba, Russia in its hardcore communist days. How many have perished because of just that? Because they opposed. I mean, the number's astonishing. And
I mean, it's debatable whether or not communism has killed more people outright for being antagonistic to communism versus communism killing people through incompetence.
That's true.
It's generally accepted that the incompetence of communist rule is what killed the majority of the people, but they aren't opposed to taking out those that don't agree with them.
Agree. And you're right about that. And incompetence, of course, manifesting in there ain't no food to eat, right? So,
or the famous story, I think it's like 5 or 6 different stories that have all kind of been combined into one, but the gist of it is in the USSR, they measured output by weight because it was simple.
Okay.
Well, take something like shoes. It's really tough to measure shoes by weight considering the variance in sizes and uses for shoes. But if you're under the gun, literally, and you got to make your quota, you're going to make a whole bunch of, for example, kids' shoes because it uses less leather, and you can make a whole bunch of them real quick. Or you're going to make big, heavy leather boots all size 12. Well, the population can't all wear size 12. The population can't all wear kids' shoes.
Yeah.
So they have to go without, all because of the stupid communist quota.
Just unbelievable. It truly is. Well, and to your point about that sort of craziness here at home, sort of connected, related, and that's these bloodthirsty Luigi Mangione fangirls.
The ones with press passes?
Correct. Press passes on the streets of New York. Spewing just their lust for murder. I just call them murder cheerleaders is what they are. They cheer assassination of an innocent human. It's just incredible.
They're glad that he's gone and going so far as to saying that his kids should enjoy the blood money.
They actually said, right, his kids are better off without him. They described him as a terrorist. They maintained that he, as the CEO of United Healthcare, killed more people than Osama bin Laden. They're putting him a notch below Osama bin Laden, referring to him as a terrorist because they disagree with the large insurers' business practices.
To the point that Luigi Mangione's defense attorney had to put out a statement saying that they are distancing themselves from the comments that they are abhorrent.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
So even the attorney, because they know this affects a popular opinion, I would say. Yeah, credentialed, quote, reporters. And I'd play it for you, but it's filled with vulgarity. At least the clips that I came across. They are self-proclaimed Mangionistas. They're worshiping an assassin. And they're proud of it. And I'm looking at a photo of them posing in their little cute girly poses here, like fangirls. Yeah, and they're, of course, they're flaunting their press passes. It's just unbelievable that this exists.
I finally found the statement. Quote, these individuals do not represent the views of Luigi nor the tens of thousands who have shown their support from around the world. The only people who speak for Luigi are his attorneys. We condemn these vile and irresponsible statements that have no place in the discourse around these cases.
That's just unbelievable. One of them, Ashley Rojas, she said, F. Brian Thompson and city, with their city-issued press pass around her neck, of course. That's all I want to say. F. Brian Thompson. F. his mom. That's just unbelievable. These people are celebrating murder. They're murder cheerleaders.
It's nothing new for liberal women.
God.
Look at Charles Manson.
We're coming right back. You're right.
From the Seabrook, Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Let's see. Tomorrow, I'm going to be at the Refuge in Flowood for the 2026 Mississippi Public Safety Summit, along with Attorney General Lynn Fitch and Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tyndall, bringing together more than 900 law enforcement officers, prosecutors, firefighters, and first responders from across our state who work every day to keep Mississippi safe. Be sure to tune in for that. And then tomorrow night, Rhino, I'm going to be on the fabulous Mississippi Gulf Coast at the Sun-Kissed Country Club in Biloxi. School choice debate. Harrison County Republican Club has invited myself and, Leah Ferretti. She's been on the program before. Lindsey Beckham with Moms for Liberty, and then Starla Brown. She's been on the program as well. Leah Ferretti, of course, with Mississippi Ready, a strong proponent of education freedom. Starla Brown, who runs the AFP office for the state of Mississippi, Americans for Prosperity, also an advocate for education freedom. So the four of us are going to be on the side of pro-education freedom, of course. And then we've got four folks that are going to be taking the position in opposition of education freedom. And that's all going to be going on tomorrow night. I think 6 o'clock's when we get going at the Sun-Kissed Country Club, Biloxi, Mississippi. Ought to be fun. Deal for sure. This will be the second such debate that I've been part of as a panelist, if you will. And it promises to be an informative and entertaining evening, I would say. It's one way to put it. And then Friday. Where are we going to be Friday, Rhino? Oh, yeah, the Armed Forces Museum down at Camp Shelby. Always look forward to that. That's this Friday, May 22nd. That's a whole day, I believe. We'll be down there from the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum in Hattiesburg at Camp Shelby. Special Memorial Day broadcast from 10 to 1. I'll feature live interviews, coverage from the Memorial Day ceremony, wreath laying, honoring those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and service to our country. Join us this Friday, 10 to 1, down at the Armed Forces Museum. So we've got, Jim Keith, Marcus Boudreaux, Bonnie Granger, and Julie Knapp will handle the opposing perspective in our school choice forum. And then again, myself, Leah Ferretti, Lindsey Beckham, Starla Brown, Chet Landry will be the moderator. Looking forward to that. Madison County Executive Committee, Republican Executive Committee, we had a great celebration Monday night, 250th year of our great country this year. And there are a series of events across the country, of course, and we had one in our county. It was well attended. Appreciate everybody that helped us out, pitched in on that one. Really good. Really good stuff. I'm still struggling with these Mangione-nistas or whatever the heck they're calling them. I just can't believe that people, these are young females. Who raised them to think that murder is okay to get your way? And again, holding the CEO of a health insurer personally responsible and justifying. And even more disturbing, I guess, is you've seen polls that show there's a large number of people, especially young people in this country, under 30, who, yeah, that's fine. If you have to kill somebody to get your way, that's fine. What? That's where we've gotten in this country?
Well, you remember the famous line from 1984, quote, "It was always the women, and above all the young ones, who were the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of slogans, the amateur spies, and nosers out of an unorthodoxy."
It seems like it. I agree. And I guess what really baffles me about these three loons, just looking at this photo of this pose, It's like they're trying to strike kind of a model pose. I mean, they're so proud of it, and it's a bit of a sort of looking down their nose, condescending, arrogant type facial expression. You know what I mean? And they're literally justifying. I mean, it's a man that had a wife and children at home, and they're okay with that? So, okay, you don't like their business practices, and that's the way that you address it? Is that where we've gotten? And it doesn't help. There's a political bent to this as well. It doesn't help that you got Democrats who, I don't want to say they condone this, but they certainly don't speak out against it as strongly, as forcefully as I believe they should. It's almost like, are they celebrating privately behind closed doors? I think they are. I really am, and that's.
Well, I mean, if you use their own liberal logic against them, silence is violence.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true, and that's honestly disgusting as well. To hold that belief really is a sad situation. But you've seen some of the people who exhibited some degree of celebration when this happened, but not to this point that I've seen. This is perhaps over the top, to the point where Mangione's lawyer had to come out and say, "Oh, well, we got nothing to do with that, Your Honor, and jury and public." I'm sure that he's guarded 24 hours a day, right? You think that, what would happen if they threw him in the slammer? Oh my gosh. I don't mean to laugh at the misfortunes of somebody like that, but the guy's a murderer. He's an assassin. He needs the death penalty. It's what he needs as a strong deterrent. You may not like the way a business operates. You may feel like you've even personally been wronged by that business. But we have remedies for that. They don't include murder. We can never allow that to happen. Our society's over. Should we condone and allow that? That just doesn't work. Yesterday we shared with you that the Democrat Party here in Mississippi, they had them a little press conference at the Capitol. They're mad about the governor calling off the redistricting of Supreme Court districts in Mississippi. That was to happen today, as a matter of fact. But he called it off after a court said, yeah, you're that previous order you got, turns out you're good to go. Those districts are fine as is. No need to redraw them. And the Democrat Party is raising hell about that, thinking that those districts are unfairly drawn. And so I guess what they want them to be drawn is that now we're finding with more of a racial bent to them, right? So that minorities are better positioned to win certain races that are connected to the Supreme Court, including the Supreme Court itself, our Supreme Court justices. We elect those in Mississippi, and other political offices, Public Service Commissioner, Transportation Commissioner. You know, the IHL board is appointed by the governor, of course, based on Supreme Court districts, equal representation on the board across the districts. Well, Congressman Benny Thompson, he's going to be talking redistricting coming up here at a Jackson town hall. He, of course, is addressing concerns about Republicans, particularly in other states that are redrawing districts, and he's concerned about them coming for his. So Congressman Thompson, other Democrat leaders, they held a town hall in Jackson to discuss the potential redistricting issue. And some politicians in our state have many, as a matter of fact, have called for dividing his majority black district to create 4 Republican seats in Congress. Very controversial matter. He held this town hall, by the way, on the 18th, just a couple of days ago. And, man, he went through all kinds of crazy stuff that doesn't really have anything to do with the redistricting. Not that we're surprised. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. Going to be at the Refuge tomorrow and then in Hattiesburg, just south of Hattiesburg, at the Armed Forces Museum. And we say it every time, Rhino, but, man, if folks out there, if you hadn't been to visit the Mississippi Armed Forces Museum there on the property at Camp Shelby, you need to do it. It really does showcase the best of Mississippi, brave Mississippians who served in America's armed forces. Mississippi has a storied history there, and it's one of those things that a feeling of solemnity comes over you, and a feeling of just deep respect, honor, and gratitude. That's coming up, Memorial Day. Don't forget it. And please understand, and a lot of folks confuse this, Rhino. There's a difference between Veterans Day, Memorial Day. Memorial Day, specifically, we're remembering, honoring those who did make the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, for our freedom. And Veterans Day, we honor all of those who have served and are veterans of America's armed forces. We are deeply grateful to all. And with respect to Memorial Day, we want the families of those who lost their lives fighting for our country to know that we are grateful for their service. It's certainly the least we can do. We're so fortunate. You hear Mark Vargas earlier talking about Iran, and you've discussed it as well. I know you keep up with that, and just the atrocities being committed by the regime in power on their own people because they dared dissent. They dared respond in the way they have because they don't like. We're just not wired that way, are we? We're not wired to be controlled by other people. We're just not. And when you try to do that, people, they express their mind and they show their true humanity. It's really what they're showing. And this is where our founders were brilliant because they understood, the basic life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that comes from our Creator. Your role, government, is to make sure nothing interferes with that. Period. End of story. But when somebody speaks out and they lose their life just for speaking out, and there are other forms of punishment as well, but certainly the most onerous is you take someone's life because they spoke out. They dissented. They push back. Can you believe that? And you lose your life over it. And we've reported stories of crazy stuff happening in the UK where just going on Twitter and saying you don't like something about government, next thing you know, the police show up at your house, put handcuffs on you. I'm not exaggerating here, am I? I mean, it's just simple sorts of.
I mean, there was a video of immigrants throwing trash cans at each other on the street in a residential area in England. And someone took a video of it, posted the video with the simple caption, "Just imagine the smell."
Oh, my God.
And they were arrested for hate crimes because they said that they were trying to say that immigrants smell bad. They were literally throwing trash around.
Oh, my gosh.
They're commenting on the smell of trash. Or rubbish, as they would call it.
Rubbish, that's right. That is what they call it. What happened to jolly old England? But you know what? They just had elections over there. They kind of turned that thing on its edge there, on its side, and upended it. That's for sure. No doubt about it. Because, just in general, people don't like oppression. They don't like other people controlling, micromanaging every aspect of their lives. It goes against the grain of human nature, and that's the one thing. All this wonderful technology we've all developed through the hundreds of years, honestly, because technology is not just computers. Technology is just human innovation to solve problems. The one thing that's remained constant through all that's human nature. That really hasn't changed. That's still bred into us. It's embedded in our DNA. And that's a good thing. That hasn't changed. And when you take action in a way that disturbs that stomps on it, you're going to get a bad reaction to it, is what happens. And actually, it's a positive reaction, but to the regimes or the controllers, it's considered a bad reaction, an unexpected one. And then they say, okay, we got to kill them. That's the only solution here. Unbelievable. Fox News, SuperTalk News, Brian Hadad at 12:35. Stay with us.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this Hump Day. All right, so I got band practice after the show today. The house band will be in action performing the 30th of May the 30th. That would be Saturday a week down at the Shucker Stadium. That's when the House of Representatives softball team will take on the Alabama legislature. This will be, I think, the third year they've had this event. And when that game is over, we're going to be entertaining them a little bit. We got Sweet Home Alabama. We've added that to the repertoire, to the set list. I think that's a propos. Also, we added a couple of other new ones that are fun to play. I told you about that earlier. The Call Me the Breeze is one of them. So, going to be fun. We added that, and we've been practicing on our own. So this will be the first time that we have performed those songs together. That will be coming up this afternoon. Looking forward to that. A shout out to my friend, our bassist, Chuck Blackwell. I think he's the one that recommended this. When you pointed out lots of great bass in the Leonard Skinner songs, and Chuck does a great job, man, playing it. Sounds just like it. He and I have to coordinate. Got to coordinate the old bass drum with the bass guitar as well. So looking forward to that. Getting ready to entertain the folks down on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast, May the 30th. So we've been talking a little bit about free speech. Why not? Here on the program today. Fundamental to our freedom in this country. top of the list in the Bill of Rights. Our founders understood it needed to be at the top of the list. You really can't have freedom unless you can freely express yourself. Now, there are, of course, some reasonable guardrails around that, very reasonable and very limited. Maybe we could argue that some of them go beyond being reasonable, but in general, you can say what you want to in this country and not worry about somebody showing up putting handcuffs on you for saying it. But not so fast, because a Colorado teacher has refused to allow a 7th grader to present her pro-life poetry submission because it's, quote, offensive and might make kids feel unsafe. What? Kids feeling unsafe about a poem on pro-life, on celebrating life?
Well, you already know this teacher is a loony liberal nut job if they're making 13-year-olds write slam poetry.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that before, by the way. What is slam poetry? Please tell me.
It's a form of prose or poetry where the intent is to put down a listener or group, hence the slam.
You're asking 13-year-olds to do that?
Some people say it goes all the way back to the 60s and the 50s and 60s and the beatniks and the hippies, but it came to prominence in the late 80s and 90s as a part of activist culture.
You're right. This is a loon. Maybe I'm old-fashioned again here. I know I call myself that all the time because I'm old, for one thing. But among 13-year-olds, that's when your mind is really all screwed up. You're going through, your mind and your body, right, are caught between just being a child not too long ago and moving into that next phase. As my wife used to say, coaching baseball as I did all those years, 13 was maybe the most difficult. That's when they get a little rebellious, a little defiant. And Julie used to say, when their jaw starts to square up, that's when you know you're in trouble. And, of course, any parent out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. Those are the ages that can be rather challenging. You know, it seems like you'd want some sort of lesson that's a little more positive, a little more uplifting.
Not if you're a miserable liberal in the teaching profession.
I guess so.
You just want to bring all your kids down to your level of misery.
That is so true. So,
because you had goals and dreams. You were going to write that book. You were going to be a best-selling author. And then reality came crashing down. You suck at writing.
So find something else. That's what's great in this country. Find something that fits your skill set and be the best at it. No, you just want to mire in negativity and depression, I guess, about that. But you got to bring some others into that fold. That's exactly what's happening. So here are some of the topics that are perfectly fine in this slam poetry exercise. They would include slamming the Second Amendment. You're not surprised by that. Mocking Jesus. And, of course, the obligatory LGBTQ rights. Oh, gosh. The staff admitted that the poem that was denied, the pro-life poem we told you about, met all the requirements, however, couldn't be read out loud because it's, quote, politically charged. Oh, gosh. So, we're politicizing human life? I guess so, huh? But mocking Jesus? No, pay no attention. That's not politically charged. Or the Second Amendment? Good grief.
I say it all the time. If it weren't for double standards, Democrats wouldn't have standards at all.
That's just terrible. The teacher also initially wanted to kick the 13-year-old out of the class during the poem presentations, but allowed her to stay in. Oh, that was good of you there. Oh, good grief. Incredible. I guess the most disturbing aspect of this is that they're teaching 13-year-olds, right? And then you wonder why you got these loons we just talked about on the streets of New York that are saying that don't care about the fact that Luigi Mangione killed a man in broad daylight. And they're praising him and wishing all the worst on his surviving family.
It's almost as if you have to be either mentally deranged or mentally deficient to be a liberal in 2026.
I think it's both. Our old buddy, the teachers union head, Randy Weingarten, isn't she something? It turns out that she's also a fraudster. You've seen
No.
She has reportedly...
The head of a union defrauding someone? No.
Oh, you can't get your head of the union card without committing fraud. She reportedly used hundreds of thousands of dollars of union dough to fund the publishing of her book, Why Fascists Fear Teachers. You have to laugh because it's so predictable. It's so predictable that she would do something like this. You can't be surprised at this. And speaking of a miserable person, this is a miserable person personified. Her picture is in the dictionary next to the word miserable. Yet she runs the most powerful teachers union in the country.
That's just a side effect of supercharging your own self-importance.
So terrible, man.
I'm a teacher. I'm fighting fascism. No, you're just jumping them down and screaming talking points that you don't even believe.
That's exactly right.
And taking money from people that could use it better than you.
She's the poster child for everything that's wrong with all that crap. And then another one here for you. I don't know why all of a sudden overnight I came across all these crazy things going on. I got to pass on. The Cambridge, Massachusetts City Council, they voted 5-2 to disable gunshot detectors. They said it specifically to protect black residents and migrants. Seriously. So is this another situation where we're exhibiting deference to criminals and we're vilifying the victims? That's how they roll in liberal la-la land. It's just incredible. Oh, we got to disable them. This might offend the people who are shooting them.
And those are the same people that would be screaming and crying and gnashing teeth saying we need more gun control if something were to happen in the news, and they got all riled up about that.
Because they found out the bad guys with guns are the profile they claim to be the champions for. Oh, we're getting fired up. We're coming right back after this break. Brian Hadad at 12:35 to talk about the SEC tournament. Rhino just said State won. 10-run ruled them.
Hello, interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, I got another fraud report for you. There was a deluge of stories related to fraud overnight that I came across. Here's one for you. North Carolina. There's a PAC, a political action committee, that is run by a chairperson. And it turns out that this chairperson has stole a bunch of money. It really is incredible. Affairs of Black People, by the way, is the name of this PAC. Cassandra Shauna Stokes, 2 counts of embezzlement, 1 count of obtaining property by false pretense, $75,000 between 23 and 24, checks to herself, cash withdrawals, very important, makeup and hair. Gotta use the stolen money for your makeup and hair. Is there anybody associated with this Black Lives Matter movement that isn't a crook? You're thinking about it. Nobody comes to
Going down the
mind.
list, I can't think of any.
Oh my gosh. That is incredible. That whole thing is just a big scam. They don't care, as you like to say, they don't give a rat's rear end about advancing black people in this country, about advocating for them. And the problem is, everything they advocate for from a policy perspective hurts them. That's what they don't get.
Because if they actually got results, they'd work themselves out of a job.
Out of business. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like we say all the time, man. Anytime there's certain incidents that occur that kind of have a racial undertone to them, they're high-fiving. I'm telling you. They're celebrating it. Here we go, more money coming in so I can go buy more makeup and get my hair done. What are you thinking when you help yourself to the kitty there? I'm not trying to sound so high and mighty and morally superior, but this seems to happen more than not. I think that's what bothers me, that they're just constant examples of this kind of nonsense.
The 2 paths that you see these type of incidents going down usually start with either someone is already doing something shady and they either get caught and share the information, or they get comfortable and share the information so that there is a co-conspirator. That's one route to go down this path.
Yeah.
And the other is incremental over time. It could be something as simple as, oops, I put that in the wrong place, or I meant to put that back, or I meant to do this or that, but it was small enough that it didn't get noticed. And then you never correct it. And then you're like, well, if they didn't miss that, what are they going to miss now? And you just keep going down that dark path.
Gotcha. I do feel like that there is some thought to that, to the point where I believe that in her mind it's justified. I keep going back to that one young black lady that had her face right in front of the camera with all the buildings on fire behind her and people running out of the stores with armloads full of merchandise, and she justified that. That's just perfectly fine. That's reparations for them to go steal all that stuff that belonged to other people. That's reparations. We're entitled to that. So you're rationalizing theft, taking someone else's stuff. Just like the Mangionistas in New York, they're rationalizing murder. Pretty much that's fundamental law that allowed this country to grow and prosper and be the best country on earth, is protecting your stuff and your life. That's fundamental. You can't have anything without that. It's impossible. Cannot have a thriving society without those 2 fundamental protections. Yet, these people are justifying violating those protections. The very protections that allowed her to stand in front of a camera and say that. That's what they don't get. And I support her right to do it. It's stupid what you did. It's despicable. It's heinous. It's horrific. But I support your right to do it because I believe in that fundamentally. You think she supports our right to talk about it the way we are?
Not in the slightest.
So true. Let me get to some text. Joey the trucker says, that's the military needs to come in there like they did in Memphis, talking about the city of Jackson. That's our capital city. I agree. I'd like to see something happen as well. But, man, when we're losing population and business closures and we're struggling to attract new business and they're meeting to talk about a moratorium on data centers, like, man, if one of these hyperscalers wanted to come in and spend several $1 billion, I'm pretty sure we could figure out a way to accommodate them in such a way that I believe we have done here. I know we've done it in Madison County. I've personally observed it. I've ridden through the facilities recently. They're in operation right now. There's no smoke, as I said earlier. There's no noise. There's no pollution. Power bills haven't gone up. The water table hasn't been depleted. What are the other things they say happened? We've had a couple of people that said it
heavy metals in the water.
Oh my God.
EF radiation from the computers.
Light, right? Light pollution. None of that. I'm proud of the way we did it here in Mississippi. We did it
because
right.
It's the same bundle of idiots that have been rolling downhill throughout history, and you can trace them back to before the hippies, but that's when the bundle of idiots really grew to astronomical proportions. And that same giant bundle of idiots just keeps trundling along, picking up new members while others get flung off. But it's all the same stupid people arguing stupid things because they're too stupid to understand reality. It's the same people that were against nuclear generation of power because, it's dangerous. Look at how the Ruskies cut every corner possible. That's why it went wrong in Chernobyl. But no, that bundle of idiots just keeps on rolling downhill, and oh my goodness, we gotta stop the acid rain. It's gonna be the end of society, and they keep on rolling down. We save the whales, Earth Day, and it just keeps on going. And now they've picked up speed to the point where, well, we got to use AI generated images to fight back against the AI in the data centers.
Exactly right. And what just happened here? There was the federal government. Was it the Department of Energy that just came out with a report that essentially refuted everything about the whole climate change narrative? Yeah, none of that actually happened or will happen. They've completely reversed on that. Did you know that in the turn of the century, when cities in this country were busy wiring up for electricity, you know, in New York, they paused that for a while because idiots were walking up to the live wires and putting hands on it. And we didn't have the kind of protections we have today against stuff like that. But you think after one, common sense would tell you, probably doesn't make sense. So they said, we can't have this electricity. We got to stop electricity. Literally that happened in New York. Well, we got to do some research to figure out this electricity's okay. I bet many people don't know that. That's absolutely a true story. Came across that, did a little digging on that this weekend. And then finally, okay, I think that electricity's okay. That's where we are. And this reminds me of that to a great
And the
extent.
same people that are adamantly against data centers because it harms the environment. It hurts the butterflies and the skies and the ocean. They're the same people that'll go drink almond milk at a coffee shop because dairy is death.
It's true.
Not understanding that those almonds require 80 times the amount of water in California alone than every stinking data center in the United States of America.
That's exactly right. That's 100% right. Flushing your toilets dramatically exceeds the amount of water consumed by data centers. Quit flushing your toilets.
Don't tell the hippies that. They're bad enough as it is.
Oh, man. You're right about that. Darren in Jackson says, I believe over half of the Democrats would support a justice system like they have in Iran in this country. That's sort of sad but true. Who would issue press passes to non-employees of the press, says Mike in Gulfport? Must be some nag looking for some readers, rag looking for some readers, no matter how messed up. Oh, I tell you who, Zoran Mondami, that's who would do that. We're coming right back with Brian Hadad. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.com. Days with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're pleased to welcome now the one, the only Brian Hadad, the co-host of Sports Talk Mississippi and Thunder and Lightning, the wildly successful Thunder and Lightning.
I like that, Gerard.
What's up, Brian?
I need you to be my hype man from now on. Just introduce me everywhere. I like that.
What's going on? The SEC tournament. That's what's going on. The Bulldogs. They put it on Missouri.
Who can't beat Missouri, Gerard? I mean,
Ole Miss, that's who.
Yeah, good win for State today. To get out of there early, get a run rule win. Valinkas throwing 6 innings. O'Connor talked about it after. He said he was on a pitch count of 80, and he threw 78. So worked out just fine. State gets to get a little extra rest, and they'll take on Georgia tomorrow. Should have wrapped up at this point the Starkville Regional. They'll be on the right side of the bracket. They'll be somewhere between probably 11 and 14, if I had to guess, for their seeding. But Mississippi State will host postseason baseball next weekend.
Okay. So are you in the camp, Brian, of those who believe that the coaches will spare the arms in the tournament and reserve them for postseason play, which comes right after the tournament?
There are some coaches who do that, and there are some who do not. And you look at today, Mississippi State moved up Valinkas today. That's their ace, and he normally he went last Thursday, but he pitched today. They kept him on a pitch count. I haven't seen yet, they haven't announced yet who State will start tomorrow, but I expect it to be one of their weekend starters. So that does mean if State were to advance all the way to Saturday, that they would be starting a guy who doesn't normally start SEC games. But when I talked to O'Connor a couple weeks ago, he said, when I go to a tournament, I try to win it. And so his mentality is to play as normally as he can. But at the same time, having Valinkas on that pitch count shows you he's thinking ahead to next week.
Yeah.
And in some ways, he pitches today. Well, he gets an extra 2 days of rest now because State will start the regional on Friday of next week. And so you bought him an extra 2 days of rest by doing this. So I'll be honest, when they announced it yesterday, I was like, I don't know about that, but it worked out perfectly for Mississippi State. That's why they pay him $3 million a year, and I just talk on the radio.
Yeah, they don't pay us that, do they?
They don't. We have to talk. We'll bring that up in our next negotiation.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so what do you think about the tournament as it rolls through for the next 3-4 days?
It's kind of interesting that there's not a lot of teams that can do much in terms of their postseason resume. Everybody is kind of where they are. They're Vanderbilt and LSU, they've got to win this tournament if they want to go to the NCAA. They want to play in the regionals next week. Yeah. I don't see that happening. I don't think those teams are going to win 6 games in 6 or 5 games in 5 days. For Ole Miss yesterday, even in defeat, if they had won 2 or 3 games in this tournament, maybe we could have found a way to get a regional in Oxford, but They didn't lose anything by losing yesterday. They'll still be on the road, and they'll probably be on the same side of the bracket as Mississippi State. They'll probably what's going to hurt Ole Miss is that if they do win their regional, they're likely to be headed to UCLA, Georgia Tech, Georgia, one of the top seeds in this. Everybody else is they're already in. Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, all these teams are already in. So. It's just about keeping sharp this week more than anything else. Nobody really gains anything. There's not a team that needs to win 3 or 4 games just to get in. The teams that need to win, they got to win them all.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that is a very difficult task to win them all.
Yeah,
that is ahead of them. I mean, there's a reason why they got to win them all because they struggled, in the season. In
LSU
particular.
and Vanderbilt were just not good baseball teams this year. There's just no getting around that. And
are you as surprised at me that 2 perennial powerhouses, honestly, in the SEC in the last several years. I mean, LSU's kind of been up and down, but, man, Vanderbilt's been at the top for quite some time. What's going on?
It took a couple of years for LSU, but they finally got bit by that national championship curse that Mississippi State and Ole Miss had to go through a couple of years back. With Vandy, I could be wrong, Gerard, but I really think that now that NIL is such a thing, that Vandy has lost the advantages it had when it was just about, everybody had the 11.7 scholarships, but Vandy was able to accentuate that, shall we say, and offer basically full scholarships to their roster through a certain academic program they were running. Well, now everybody's got money to spend, and everybody's putting extra money into these players. So I'll be surprised. I thought Vandy might drop off last year. They were actually the number one seed in the tournament going into it. They didn't make it out of their regional. They really struggled this year, especially in midweek games. They lost so many games they had no business losing. I think Vandy's days as a top program are kind of numbered. LSU should be back next year, but LSU kind of has the same problem, Gerard. And there's only so much money, right? And Lane Kiffin got $50 million for NIL, and Will Wade is spending money bringing all these Europeans over to play for him, and Kim Mulkey's not going to take less money. You don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
So where are we not spending money? It could very well be in baseball. So I'll be interested to see what LSU's transfer portal class looks like. But yeah, they were the preseason number 2 team in the nation. I'm absolutely surprised they were as terrible as they were.
It's amazing still, I think, not just to me, but I'm sure that folks who are tuned in, that you're absolutely right to talk about the money aspect, the money component of this, but how that really has become the deciding factor in almost everything in college athletics.
I mean, it's just like taking a job. You have two jobs that are kind of similar. All right, where am I going to make more money?
Yeah,
and that that's how we would look at it as grown-ups if we're talking about a job. And a lot of these kids, and there's still some facets of recruiting, your relationship with your coaches. Maybe sometimes you just pick a program because it's just a better program in terms of wins and losses, but. Money is the deciding factor for almost everything in this life, and so now it's reached college athletics to that way.
Wasn't too long ago, facilities were a big
huge
factor,
deal.
right?
Yeah. I mean, think about Mississippi State, $60-70 million to rebuild Dudy Noble Field, and you think about that now, and I don't know when they'll put more money into that facility. It's going to be way down the road if they do it, I would think, because the money that needs to be spent, it needs to be spent on getting players more than anything else.
Yeah. I think about how that used to be a big deciding factor for a recruit, and I think that's kind of fallen down the list somewhat of priorities.
And that's why I was surprised last year when State announced that they were going to build a new football practice facility. I was like, I was just surprised to see them encouraging people to put their money there. But at the same time, Gerard, if a donor comes to Zach Selman, comes to Keith Carter, comes to Jeremy McClain and says, I want to give you $40 million, but I want you to spend it on this. What are they going to say? No?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want your $40 million. You're going to build whatever they tell you to build. So
that's totally true.
That family wanted to have an indoor practice facility. They wanted to have that, and so that's what they're going to build. But you're right. Facilities used to be a much bigger deal than it is now.
I heard from a rumor this morning, I guess I'll call it a rumor at this point, just to kind of illustrate where all this is going. It's customary to have these various events that are sponsored by the collectives and so forth. So I'm hearing about one at my alma mater where you're going to have to pay money to get an autograph.
Oof. Well, I mean, that's so State and Ole Miss both this year did a fan day or did something similar to that, where it was free of charge. But that's something State is definitely moving to, of offering NIL opportunities for appearances and offering NIL opportunities to do interviews and things like that. And that's something that the is it the CSC? I think it's what it's called. It's basically the group that oversees your collectives and oversees your NIL deals.
Yeah.
And they see that as, okay, Mississippi State paid this player X amount of dollars, but player had to show up at this event for X amount of time, and he signed autographs and took pictures, and we have proof that happened. We can approve that deal, as opposed to a lot of your NIL deals are kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, yeah, they're going to have to do something. they are trying to crack down on that a little bit. So.
Yeah, and I understand the description you gave there. I'd say, though, Brian, that's a little different than, you're there with your grandson who wants an autograph with their favorite football star. You give me $30 first or something like that. It's a pretty awkward situation.
It is. But, I mean, unfortunately, that's just that.
That's where we are, huh?
Well, it's just like, when you take your kids anywhere, you know that you're going to be spending a ton of money at the concession stand and on souvenirs. It's just the same thing now. You go to a fan day, you better have some cash or something because you're going to be paying to get those autographs. It's just no different than buying your kid popcorn and a drink at the circus.
I guess so. They've been elevated to that status.
They have.
Yeah.
They have. We have done that, too.
By the way, one of our regular listeners, Tim and McGee, said, "Hey, Dad, it's top shelf." Just wanted to pass that on.
Tim's
to you
a rebel
there,
too, so I appreciate him. I love all my Ole Miss listeners, and of course, Gerard, as you have stayed the course. Still my favorite rebel.
Yes,
here in the state of Mississippi, you're still
Richard?
number one. Oh, Richard. I can't wait to put him in maroon and white at the Palmer home. That's going to be some fun times.
We're going to have fun.
Yes, sir.
Larry and I said hello, by the way.
Oh, tell Larry I'll talk to him at 3 o'clock. We'll see him at Sports Talk.
Appreciate it, Brian.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for all you do, man.
Anytime, baby.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
At Key Constructors are
The stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert, Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk Mississippi.
Standing in the rain with his head hung low, couldn't get a ticket. It was a sold-out show. Heard the roar of the crowd. He could picture the scene. Put his head to the wall. Then, like a distant scream, he heard one guitar. Just blew him away. Saw stars in his eyes. And the very next day.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Hey, Dad, it's pretty awesome, and thank you for a great show, Gerard. Those Sports Talk guys are a handful, says Nathan. They're fantastic. They have a great show. And I tell you, Rhino, that show's in demand. They do lots of remotes. Folks want them on site. And I don't blame them because they have a great audience and they do a job that is unsurpassed in the state. That's for sure. You can't get that kind of analysis, that kind of insight and information regarding sports. And we're sports nuts here. Of course, we don't have any pro teams, so we're highly focused on college athletics and, of course, high school athletics as well. And those individuals, they team up well to deliver information and entertainment regarding that. Yeah, I totally agree. And I always enjoy having Brian on. I love to kid with him. I think we have a good flow. It's fun. We've been talking this morning somewhat about, these just permanently aggrieved people, I guess I'll call them. We talked about the teacher in Colorado that is requiring her 13-year-old students to write some slam poetry. It's just dumb. I just don't get that. And denied one of her students' requests to write one slamming abortion, essentially. Then we talked about Randy Weingarten, the teachers union chief, that is just a miserable human that stole money. And then another individual who runs a PAC that's all about supporting black folks in North Carolina, and in particular heavily active in supporting BLM activities. Turns out this person stole money from the PAC. And we've got the people on the streets of New York that are celebrating the murder of a healthcare insurance CEO and are proud of their celebration of said murder. And then, of course, we got this movement in this country that's just anti-success, anti-wealth, anti-profit. It's the billionaire's fault. Everything's the billionaire's fault. I wonder if those people, say in New York, that are part of that movement know that New York was built by billionaires. They don't get it. Risk takers, innovators, job creators, who I promise.
Well, they either don't understand that, or if they do, they just derive their entire life's meaning from the envy they feel for the other's success.
Total resentment. And then you got Stacey Abrams. We talked about this yesterday. Ran for governor over there in Georgia, and then attempted to insert herself in the mayor's race in the city of Gulfport, Mississippi. And basically says that all this redistricting, and she's not alone in this respect. Oh, they're returning to the Jim Crow era, and actually said that about our speaker, Mike Johnson. She made those comments because Mike Johnson talked about how necessary it was to pass the SAVE Act to protect the integrity of our elections. That's Jim Crow. And many, many times we've referenced these whiners, these complainers, who always, I think, try to promote this narrative as if we're in 1860 still. It cannot recognize the monumental progress we've made in this country. And I'm the first to admit it ain't perfect because we're humans and we're flawed. But I say all this to lead up to this. You know who doesn't complain about billionaires, about our past transgressions, who don't bash capitalism? The immigrants. They love the country more than the damn Americans do in many cases. I'm not talking about the illegal thugs. They need to get the hell out of here. And there's no place for them in this country. I'm talking about legitimate immigrants that want to come to this country for a better quality of life. They smile about it. They're happy about it. They don't see it the way people who were born into this fantastic nation that we live in. They're so unappreciative of it. They don't smear it. They don't resent others. That only comes from the liberals in the country. The liberals in this country, honestly, are the most biased, the most racist, the most discriminatory, the most intolerant. Yet they preach to us about that all. They gaslight with us about that all the time. You need to look in the mirror. You're the nation's most intolerant, most insufferable ilk of all.
Yeah, modern liberals are the largest, biggest, most worthless wastes of oxygen on the planet.
Out of here today, going to be at the refuge tomorrow for the big public safety event. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.